Hey folks, this is Mark with Gehring Family Farm, Pure Maple Syrup, and Apple Creek Outdoors YouTube channel. Today I wanted to make a video showing you how we filter our maple syrup with our LaPierre Siro filter. This Siro filter we purchased about 7 or 8 years ago at least, and we really like the Siro filter. It gives us a nice clear syrup. One of the things I really like most about the Siro filter is how clean the whole process is of filtering the syrup. Everything is very well contained. It's easy to clean up, real quick to clean up. So that's one of the main reasons we really like this little filtration system. Now we run about 1,000 taps. They do make a size that's about double. I think it's a 24-inch where this is a 12-inch filter. But for the size that we are, we typically will process about 12 to 15 gallons of sap at a time. And this 12-inch size is just perfect for that. So anyway, just want to run through how we do things here. Hopefully if you have a Siro filter or are thinking about getting a Siro filter, it would be helpful to you in making your decision. And then also if you do have one, there are a few things that we've learned through the years on how to effectively and efficiently use this thing, and hopefully maybe some of this information that you get from the video will be helpful for that. But anyway, let's just go ahead and get started here. Now this Siro filter, this main unit, I typically never detach the bottom from this side. I mean, if you do, it comes off very easily. Just a couple of snap clips. The one thing you do want to make sure is that you keep these rubber seals nice and clean. But on the course of a regular season, I actually don't think I take that off at all. Oh, let's see if I can get this snap back on. You do want to make sure it's centered on those rubber gaskets. The best you can center it. And then the next part of getting the Siro filter ready is putting the filters on this center unit. Now, I like to double the filters. We found out that this actually provides the most efficient filtration. Now, these filters come in two sizes, 1 micron and 5 micron. So we'll take that 1 micron filter, and you can tell which is which. The 1 micron is a heavier filter, but we'll put that on the canister here, and you want to pull it really tight. Make sure it's centered. Here, let's show this here. This groove right here is where these rubber O-rings will set, and you can see, since this filter's been used several times, that O-ring will lay right in there and push that filter against the inside canister. So try to get that in the same place time after time. It kind of retains that shape. Now, one of the important things is where you line up this seam. The directions in the book were, I thought, a little bit unclear. To me, the picture showed something a little bit different than the wording, and I think we were doing it wrong at first because we were getting a little bit of maple sand passing through the filter. But if you think about how this goes together, alright, so the syrup will come from the pump, from the pressure pump here, into this side of the Siro filter. You don't want the Velcro seam to be right where that is lining up. So the syrup will be coming in from the pump right here. You want your seam, oh, I gotta slide here. Now the book recommends placing it opposite of where the syrup is going to enter. I like to go 90 degrees from where it's going to enter. Just like this. I think both ways work. But the main thing you want to make sure of is that your filter overlap does not occur opposite of this, what is it called here? The square gutter is what the instructions call it. So anyway, make sure that 1 micron filter gets in there lined up correctly. And then once that is on there, now the book recommends putting both O-rings on the outside, because what we're going to do here is we're actually going to double up the filters. But I have found I like placing the O-ring on that inner filter first. And that O-ring just fits real nice into that groove. Make sure it's in the correct position, and do replace those O-rings whenever they're starting to feel stretched out. You want those O-rings to be nice and tight. Now the other thing that I like to do here, where this Velcro overlap is, I like to press that down pretty hard. Make sure there's a good seal there. Now what I like to do is get the 5 micron filter, and I'm going to place this on opposite, or so it laps opposite of the 1 micron filter. So here you can see the overlap on the 1 micron inner filter, and now on the opposite side I'm going to place the overlap of the 5 micron filter. Now these filters, this outer filter is starting to look pretty rough. We've used it all season. But using that 5 micron on the outside really extends the functional life of that 1 micron filter. And I like to do the same thing with this one. I'll get that seam on a hard surface and roll it in. And now this is the older set of O-rings that I have, and they are a little bit more stretched out. So these are the ones I'll put on the outside. And I'll place it just below the O-ring that's holding the 1 micron filter on. And I'll do that with top and bottom. And now it looks like everything is ready to go. One thing you want to make sure of is make sure none of this filter gets pinched underneath your metal right here on this inner canister, because if it does, it'll allow for space for the maple sand to get through. And the same thing on the top. You want to make sure that all that filter is off of the edge of that. So then we'll place that inner canister inside the outer canister. I look down, make sure it's centered on the rubber gasket that's down there. Then we'll take the Siro filter lid. We'll place that on. Now I like to also just wiggle that just a little bit, make sure everything's centered, so everything is on the center of the rubber gaskets. Place my washer and this bearing, and then tighten this down fairly tight. Alright, so we're almost ready to go here. Now I will connect the, this is the line that's coming from the pump. It's got a little cam lock right there. Connect that, and then this is the line that will go to the canning unit, or if you were not canning right away, to your bulk storage. Now first I'm going to hook it into the finishing pan over here, because you need to run that Siro filter for about 30 seconds to 45 seconds to make sure everything's just running appropriately. But we'll recirculate it into the syrup pan for the finishing pan for a little bit, and then after about 30 to 45 seconds, we'll redirect it to the canning unit. So that's pretty much how the setup works. Now I'm going to go through the actual filtration process, some of the things that I found that actually works pretty good. We do use, especially for the last half of the season, or last 2/3 of the season, we do use diatomaceous earth filter aid, the DE, food grade DE. And what this does is it provides like a cake of filtering surface area on top of that Siro filter cloth, and it keeps the cloth from clogging up quite so fast, especially years like this year where we actually end up having a lot of more what I would call maple mud rather than maple sand. It's just a very, very fine particulate maple sand, and if you don't put the diatomaceous earth, the filter aid in there, it will clog that filter really quick. So we already do have the syrup at the temperature it needs to be. We're right at 219.2 degrees, and I've been double checking it with a hydrometer as well, so I know we're right at the correct canning density. And for 12 to 15 gallons of syrup, which I'd say we have about 15 to 16 gallons of syrup here, this is a 12-ounce jar, so anywhere from about 1.5 to 2 cups of this diatomaceous earth. Now, the trick here is getting this on the filter before the maple sand starts accumulating on the filter. And the way we do that is I will pour this in and it'll float on top. I'll start the pump and then I will stir it in. You'll see this here in just a second. I'm just going to explain it now because I may not be able to explain it effectively once I get going, because it's kind of a bang process. But I want this filter aid to get sucked through first so it sticks to the filter before the maple sand starts sticking to the filter. And that'll provide for better filtration, or a greater likelihood that we'll actually be able to filter all the syrup before the Siro filter gets clogged. So now what we'll do, and notice I've turned the burners down so there's not a whole lot of circulation currents. If you have too much circulation current in your finishing pan, it'll distribute this filter aid all over the syrup rather than allowing it to go through first. And once again, you want this to go through first. So ways to prevent that: really cut back on your heat so you don't have circulation currents. I'm just going to pour this over the intake. And you can see it just kind of floats there. Now I'm going to grab my whisk, and as I turn this on, I'm going to direct the syrup to the Siro filter. Still ended up with quite a bit of circulation current, but I think a fair amount went to the bottom. And then what I also like to do, take a spoon on the bottom and bring that coarser maple sand so it gets drawn out first. You can see here we've had some circulation going, so we'll count to 30. that's been running through there. Everything should be purged from the line, should be nice and clean. And now all we have to do is monitor the pressure. Now I like to keep things as low as possible in the pressure, but as that gradually increases, we'll have to open up the bypass. And you can still filter a lot of syrup once you open that bypass a little bit, but one thing, we never let it go above 40 pounds of pressure. Actually, I try to keep it below 35 pounds of pressure while we're filtering. Now we have enough syrup right now that I think I'm going to have to actually start bottling some as the pump is working. That's where it's handy to have somebody else in the kitchen with us to make sure that the pressure doesn't get too high. Because when this is pumping, when this is filtering, there's a lot going on. And if you go too high, well, I don't know. I'd hate to see what would happen if this reached too high of a pressure. I wouldn't want hot syrup exploding all over the kitchen. I don't know if that would happen or what. So I don't want to find out. So far, it seems to be filtering pretty good. If you can get the first 5 or so gallons of syrup through, which we're about at right now, is probably 4 to 5 gallons of syrup have already filtered, and that pressure has not rose above 10 pounds. Usually that's an indicator that I'm going to get the whole batch through without having to change filters. And even then, I don't really change a filter and finish a batch. If it did not finish, I would just include that syrup with the next batch that I filtered. But anyway, I'm going to get some jars and start bottling some syrup before we have a mess on our hands here. And I'll let my helpers watch the pounds of pressure on that. We've got over half of this batch of syrup filtered now, probably about 8 gallons or so, 6 to 8 gallons. The pressure is still just barely above 10. We're looking at about 12 psi. So that's encouraging. We should get it all filtered. So the pressure is starting to climb now. The filter's obviously getting a little bit more clogged. So up to around 30, getting ready to hit the bypass. I would go ahead and start opening that up just a little bit. There you go. Try to keep it around 30. Now, a little thing that I like to do once we start hitting that bypass is I'll use the bypass syrup to help flush more of that maple sand out of my finishing pan. So once that's finished filtering, take my block out of the back so the pan's sitting level. Get some insulated gloves. You'll definitely want some gloves for this because that Siro filter canister is very hot. Release that cam lock. There was a little bit of syrup still in it. This is why I like having my finishing pan right next to the pumping unit like this. I can just let that drain in there. Move everything away from that corner. Now, one of the recommendations in the instructions is to run some hot water through here to recover the syrup that's in there. What I've found that there's really not that much syrup to recover other than what will come out if I put this unit upside down on the corner of the pan. So I will take take this and turn it upside down right in the corner of the pan. Sometimes you just got to work with it to figure out where it will sit best. As long as you don't bump it though, it stays fairly balanced right there, and that allows a lot of the syrup to back drain into your syrup pan, and you can filter that next time. So that's the way we like to do that. We just don't feel that there's enough syrup in the filter left over once I've done this to make it worth running the hot sap or hot water through it to try to recover that little bit of syrup. So once this is cooled, then we'll go ahead and open that up and take the filters off, clean everything, and we'll show you how that's done once it cools off. Alright, so we have finished canning about 15 gallons of syrup. Now, one of the ways, or a couple things I wanted to show you here at the end of this video. One of these is inside the canning unit. So you'll know if you're passing any sugar sand or any of the filter aid if you look at the bottom of your filter pan or your canning pan when you're done, and you'd see particles. Now if you look in here, there's actually, I think right over here we have actually what looks like a little bit of sugar crystallization. But you would see, if the filtering was not working correctly, you would see particles all over on the bottom of that pan. So that's one of the ways you can kind of check to make sure your filtering is working correctly, and that looks really good. Now, one of the mistakes that we made earlier in this season, and I've made in the past, is on this canning unit, it's like a double boiler setup. We have just a water bath here, and that's heated, and that prevents direct heat from being put to the syrup. And most of you probably know that if you heat the syrup up much above 190, you're going to get some maple sand forming back in the syrup. Well, what the mistake that we made is that I had this boiling, and the bottom of this pan was really hot when it was empty, and when we pumped the syrup into here, we had maple sand formation in the bottom of this pan. So that's one of the mistakes that a person can easily make. You do not want to get this pan hot. You want to go ahead and filter your syrup into this pan, and then start your burner and bring that water in that double boiler system up to temperature. Because if you, once again, if you start with a really hot pan that's empty, you'll end up with some maple sand forming on the bottom of it. But anyway, now let's go back to the Siro filter, and I'll show you how we clean that. That's been draining now the whole time that I have been working on bottling the syrup. It's still pretty hot, so I'll take that and I bring this over to the sink here. Having this large basin sink with a hose here is really handy for cleaning up, and I have that right next to this triple basin sink here. So as I take it apart, I just wash all the syrup off of it, get everything nice and clean. These didn't have any residue on them. Lid's got a little bit here. We'll clean both sides of this lid. Great thing about syrup is all that you need to clean up is hot water. We have that nice and clean. Set this right here. Now, ooh. All right, so this is not going to work like I intended it to. All right, Jed, get my leather gloves. We have, I think I've mentioned before, we have never had maple sand like we have had this year. And this year it's been so much so that it cakes this this unit from edge to edge. You can see there's the injection point where the syrup gets run into the filter, but it just cakes it completely. So we've had to employ some different methods of cleaning up. We're going to head outside and see if we can pull this apart. Yeah, I'm going to leave this together. All right, Did you see if you can grab the bottom there and pull?
What's the clip?
I'm pulling the inside out though. You just keep pulling. You just set your feet and pull. Come on. Okay, this is not going to work. And my hand is getting really hot. So let me switch hands.
You want me to set the camera down and me grab? And
Yeah, you see if you can grab and pull it apart. Usually this is not anything like this. Usually I can just lift it out.
Tractor and Jeep?
Alright, well, we're going to have to employ a different method. This is what I've been doing this year when it acts like this. So when it gets full and does not want to separate, I'll go ahead and take the bottom off. And we will lift this out. And this is where is my jet nozzle? This is where this little jet nozzle comes in really handy. So this is what I've been doing this year. Essentially just shooting a jet of water along the edge of the outside. So I thought I had it. So here you can kind of see how thick this maple sand has been building up this year. One of the gaskets came off as I was jetting water down it. Let's go back outside now. Here you can see the maple sand coming off. Alright, so that's the worst part of that. So this, right now I'm just washing the filter. Actually, I'm going to switch over and make some room here. I'm going to wash the canister shell. Yeah, this year is the first year we have ever had so much sand in a filtration that it makes the filter difficult to get apart. Now I'm just washing off the base here. One of the things you'll have to watch for if you do take the bottom off, it's happened a couple times this year, these rubber gaskets will want to pull out of their little groove that they go into, so you want to make sure you get those put back. But normally though, I do not have to separate this when I clean the Siro filter. Here I was bragging about how clean of a process it is, which it would have been clean if I'd have been more careful and not splashed water, or if I'd have done this outside. Usually I can clean up everything in here and not get anything splashed out of the sink. So right now I'm just watching the excess sand off the outside filter. Now we'll remove these gaskets. The outer filter. And you can see there's a little bit of syrup still in there, but once again, over the course of a season, it probably wouldn't amount to a pint of syrup. So we don't mess with trying to recover that little bit of syrup. Get all these filters off, and now I will finish rinsing off the inside part of the canister. I think this 12-inch size of Siro filter is just a really convenient size to work with. I think anything any larger would just be more difficult to work with. And like I said, we run 1,000 taps, so and it works fine for our size of operation. I like to jet the water backwards through the collection ports, because the way this filter works is as the syrup goes through the filter, it'll follow these grooves to these collection ports right here, and then from those collection ports it comes out of this cam lock fitting and into the canning unit. But it looks like we got this pretty clean. Just set this over here. Get everything out of the way now. Show you how we wash these filters. So washing these filters, I like to just run a little bit of hot water and let them soak a little bit as I'm working on other things. Like right now, just cleaning these O-rings, getting all the sand and sugar and syrup off of these. Hang those up to dry. Then I'll usually take my 5-micron filter first. I will lay this. This little thing here that I'm using came out of the top of the canning unit for a gravity flow filter, but it works great for cleaning these filters. Now here I'll take that jet nozzle off the end of my little hose fitting. And I pay attention to how I lay this up here. This was the side that was, well, the syrup was being pressed against this side. So this would be like the inside of the filter. You can tell by the way it conformed to the filter below it. But I'm trying to drive any of the syrup and the sand, all those particles, I'm trying to drive it back out through the direction. If it was trying to come this way, I'm trying to drive it in the other direction for the first rinsing. And I just take this hose right here and run it back and forth until all the syrup color disappears. You never want to use soap, of course, on one of these filters. Just hot water is the only thing you want to use, and you don't want to put them in a washing machine either to agitate them. That will break down the structure of the filter prematurely. But just running the water across it, getting in the Velcro strips really good. Then once that direction has been cleaned, I'll turn it around. Now at this point, usually the only residue is in the Velcro strip area. Maybe along the edges right there. So once I've got it all clean, I'll go ahead and put it on a hanger and just hang that up over the sink here. Now this other one's had a little bit of time to soak. And once again, I'm going to be looking for the side that was against the metal now. This was against the inside canister of the filter, of the filtration unit. And you can tell that by the ribs. I don't know if you can see that in the camera or not, but this side though was against the metal. So the syrup was filtering from this side through this side. So I'm going to back flush this one as well. And I just try to go back and forth, hitting every square inch of filter area to drive any syrup back through, or any of the debris, the maple sand. And once again, usually the part that requires the most attention is up there where the Velcro strips are attached. And I'll just keep pushing that water through that filter. That should do it. So we'll hang this one up. Now these filters do not have to be completely dry before you use them to filter another batch of syrup, but I like them to be clean. So anyway, there you have it, folks. That's how we use our Siro filter and how we go through the filtration process for our maple syrup. If you have any questions, you can ask them down below and we'll try to respond. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and what? Oh, and subscribe. Yeah, the guy behind the camera is telling me to share all those things. So anyway, we appreciate you watching. Hopefully you learned a little bit, and we look forward to seeing you in future videos.